Ferdinand Keat had always harbored strong emotions towards the pigmen. Hearing tales of nether forces burning down villages, full of women and children no less, turned his stomach. He had heard these stories enough times that he felt nothing but hatred for them all. Only just turning 17, Ferdinand did not yet qualify for the Port Bray Grand Army, and even if he did, he had not yet decided King Donal's army was the best plan of attack, or defense as it was, against the enemy. King Donal was simply reacting to the attacks, not taking it to them. People who claimed to be in the know of these battles claimed humans were only barely holding on to the stalemate, as the forces of fire and lava far outnumbered those of men. Ferdinand and his friends, who gathered frequently at the Adventurers Guild of Port Bray, often talked of other ways to defeat their foe. These conversations frequently turned to the Frost Druids and their supposed power over ice and cold. It was known that the zombie pigmen fear water, and since ice is just a form of it, that should have a strong effect, right? No one Ferdinand knew had ever seen a Frost Druid in action until the fateful day that he himself had been saved by a full group of them. This was the only push he needed. It was time to set out from Port Bray, away from the only home he had ever known, and throw in with these mysterious druids. Maybe, just maybe, if he could learn their magics, he could come back to Port Bray and convince the king that they, the Frost Druids, could indeed be man's salvation. Ferdinand Keat set out, heading down the West Road early, just a few days after resigning as first mate of the Bearded Saber. He was convinced that the Frost Druids must have the only way to actually win the war with the Nether, and that he could be the one to bring it back to the east. He had asked for his final pay to come early so he could hire a ranger freewalker to escort him from Port Bray to White Sands, as a ticket for the airship ride would have used nearly all of his savings. Freewalker Thawkins was the only one in the Adventurers Guild that morning, and was willing to go at once, saying he had been cooped up under a roof for too long and did his best thinking at starlight. Although the ranger freewalkers are paid by the king, it is on their patron to feed and house them for as long as they are on the road. In return, they pledge to protect their ward from the many thieves and worse along the journey. As they walked, Ferdinand picked Ranger Thawkins' mind about the world outside the walls of Port Bray. Although the youngster had traveled far from the castle, he generally sailed only to ports and harbors, loaded the ship, and sailed back to the safety of the city. Thawkins told him many tales of gambling, women, encounters with thieves, and more, but would say nothing when Ferdinand prodded him about the Frost Druids. Thawkins told him the furthest west he had ever traveled to was ice, beyond the Monument to the Fallen, but he would speak no more of what he saw there, only that it was best seen with one's own eyes. Many days and nights passed without incident when they finally approached White Sands. Ferdinand asked yet again the price to be accompanied from White Sands through the frozen lands to the west, and yet again the ranger grunted that he'd be happy to return to the east, and something about them keeping the visions to themselves. Maybe the older man meant to dissuade Ferdinand from his journey, but it did no such thing. Although he knew the road was hard and about to get much harder on his own, Ferdinand Keat stepped a bit more quickly as he approached the city of White Sands. Ferdinand Keat arrived safely at White Sands after a long, uneventful journey. Although ranger escorts are paid for by King Donal, the traveler is still required to pay for food and lodging while on the road. It seems Ferdinand underestimated the older ranger's appetite and the amazing amount of mead he could consume before passing out at each inn or tavern along the way. Still, though, Ranger Thawkins had proved his worth when they had been attacked by a large group of skeletons near Princeton. By the time the pair made their way to White Sands, Ferdinand was nearly broke. As they approached the palace gates of the Gambler's City, Ferdinand asked Ranger Thawkins, "It looks like I'll be staying here for some time. I'll need to find a job to earn enough to continue west. Any suggestions?" As he typically did with any question requiring an answer longer than a grunt yes or a grunt no, Thawkins simply shrugged and continued on through the front gate. Ferdinand extended his hand to thank the ranger for the safe escort through the wild, but he replied by muttering something about a hangover and needing a stiff drink. Nodded and turned away from the boy. "Well, it looks like I'm on my own." A few weeks passed. Ferdinand found odd jobs around the city, anything from gathering ice overnight or scraping windblown white sand off roofs. One night, after a long, hard shift at the ice farms north of the city, Ferdinand shuffled over to the Adventurers Guild of White Sands, named the Dry Mouth. Only a few patrons sat at the bar. One was a familiar face.
"Found work, boy?"
muttered Thawkins. He was sitting in front of several empty shot glasses and looked like he had been hitting it hard all night. Some, not much that pays, though.
"I'm headed west. If you want to make some coin, you're not helpless with a sword, and further west, the less civilized things get."
Are you offering me a job?
"I'm leaving tomorrow at dawn. Come if you want."
Putting down his glass, the ranger stalked out of the bar. Why was the older ranger headed west? He said he only goes to White Sands. Ferdinand hadn't even had a chance to ask. But he was offered a job that wasn't harvesting ice or scraping sand, and one that got him further to his goal of meeting the Frost Druids. It was time to pack his few things and prepare for his journey to the west. Special thanks to my patrons and my YouTube members who make all of this possible. I thank you every episode, and I'm going to continue doing it. Thank you guys, really, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. And my family say thank you very much. If you are a YouTube member or a patron and you don't have your reward yet, please contact me. Please contact me, because everyone's username / email / Discord name and everything else is very different, and it gets very confusing on who's who. So if I've missed it, it's just an oversight and I'm not slacking. Please let me know. That being said, thank you for watching another episode from the War of Vasten. These again are rehashes of kind of older episodes that we did beginning, but I'm melding them all together so the story makes a little bit more sense, a little bit easier to follow, so it's not hopping back and forth between all different characters. We're going to continue following Ferdinand until the completion of his story. Then we're going to go over to like the Father Chody story as well. So I think it'll make more sense. So if you're watching this on a playlist, you can see episode, and it's all sort of one storyline. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.